try to keep us on track and get us out of here so you can enjoy your afternoon. Again, I know many of you have seen me. I was introduced Sunday evening as well. I'm Betty Burke from Merit Network. I'm responsible for the NANOG operations and some other Merit projects back in Ann Arbor. The agenda for this afternoon and this evening is pretty straightforward. It's up on the screen. I'm just going to give you some of my general observations of why we're here. I'm going to introduce Mike McPherson to my right, who is the Merit Interim CEO and President. Steve Feldman is here in the audience, and he's going to share some views with us about the Merit proposal. Martin Hannigan as well is going to share some views. Had to make sure he was there. And then in large part what we wanted to do was leave the meeting open for open discussion of the charter that you now have seen up on Merit's the NANOG Merit website, as well as any conclusions or next steps that we might come away with from this afternoon's meeting. So with that, I'll move to my very, very brief slide, which is just a little bit of stage setting. Why are we here? Well, we're here because in Reston, Virginia, a group of folks from the NANOG community, those who are attending the meeting, met with me after the meeting and began to have a dialogue with me about some concerns they had with NANOG operations in general, some observations that they had, which then led to some additional discussions in the NANOG list, as well as a community meeting that we all had in good time in Las Vegas. That led to the charter proposal that you've seen from Merit, as well as a Sunday night discussion that I gave a budget report to the community. It's just all of the background information that brings us to this afternoon's meeting. What do we hope to accomplish? We hope to come away, we being Merit, hope to come away from this meeting this afternoon with a clear set of understandings, issues from all of you, from your point of view, any reactions that you may have with the NANOG charter as proposed, and get moving and go to the next step of NANOG evolution. What do we want to accomplish over the summer months to put together a great program for you in the fall? So that's the background setting, and I'm sort of done. I will introduce Mike McPherson now, and we'll go through some of the charter proposals.
It's always tough using somebody else's computer. So, what I wanted to do today, just briefly, because I'm making the assumption that if you've taken the time to be here and perhaps stayed late, that you've already read through these materials, and in fact a lot of you had a hand in producing the NANOG reform bylaws draft. But I wanted to run through the major points very quickly, just as a recap, in case there's somebody in the room who's coming to this late. So we've cribbed from the NANOG reform proposal quite a lot. We at Merit have talked about more than just the folks who are directly involved in NANOG. We've talked a lot about the things that have been proposed by the reform community over the past year, and find a whole lot of sense and value in that stuff. And so by and large, we find ourselves in agreement with the things that have been proposed. We've put together a plan which we sent out a mail message about. We intend to implement the plan over the summer and make this actually happen. This isn't just talking points. Our intention is to move ahead, and we wanted to give this opportunity today for people to say their piece if they think that we're not going far enough. If you think we're going too far, that's what we're looking for today. So I won't talk much about this. This is just kind of an amalgam of the current mission and some new language out of the new document. One of the things, so the NANOG reform bylaws proposal was written from the point of view of NANOG as a separate organization. Of course, NANOG is not a separate organization. NANOG is something that Merit does. And that, at least for the moment, needs to stay that way, and that has some fallout later on in the proposed charter, as you've already seen. But just a reminder that NANOG is a Merit activity. It's something that Merit's committed to. We're enthusiastic about the changes that have been proposed. We believe that it's critical for the future success of NANOG, and we are committed to the success of NANOG. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think these changes were really necessary and useful. As I mentioned in my message, which probably all of you have seen, we at Merit have a fairly strong opinion about the question of membership. There are a couple of issues. One issue is purely mechanical. If we establish a membership class which is separate from meeting attendance as eligibility for voting, then we have to put some sort of infrastructure in place for managing membership. That's purely a mechanical issue. There would be effort and cost involved with that, and so if we were going to do that, we need to be sure that it's worth doing. We also have, I think, strong feelings, perhaps rooted in the history of NANOG, that there's something special about participation in the face-to-face meeting. And we understand that there was, I believe I wasn't involved in the entire NANOG reform discussion. I wasn't on that mailing list, but I believe that there were extensive discussions on the question of voting rights and membership, and we may hear some more of that today. But we're proposing that eligibility for voting be determined solely by registration for a meeting, and we use the word registration very specifically as opposed to attendance. Again, if we used attendance as the criterion, we would have to establish some sort of mechanism for tracking attendance, and we already track registration. That one's easy. This also, if you feel really strongly that you never want to go to a NANOG meeting, but you sure want to vote in NANOG, this gives you kind of a backdoor membership, if you really want to think of it that way. If you want to register for a meeting once every 2 years, then you can vote. You don't have to show up. You just have to register. We are proposing that we go with a six elected member steering committee with a seventh member appointed by Merit. The steering committee would appoint the program committee, would appoint the mailing list administration team, would work with Merit on the budget, and would be deeply involved in fiscal issues for NANOG, would work with Merit to provide
Just wondering if I can ask a question before, during the presentation.
Sure.
Previously, you said that anyone who registers for NANOG can participate in the vote.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discussion about this, I know, in the reform conversations. Are you suggesting that people could register and then not show up but also not pay the registration fees and still participate? Or are you saying that there is, in fact, a for-fee way of voting? It will cost you $100 or $25, or what was the model that you had in your mind?
No, we're suggesting that that a paid registration is your ticket to vote, basically.
So in effect, $350 every 2 years.
$350 every 2 years. Right. And so if you want to think of that as a membership fee, then you can. But we would certainly hope that you would show up, since we think that there's tremendous value in the face-to-face. Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Let's see, I think I was on liaison. So we would ask the steering committee to work with Merit on liaison with other organizations, the various other regional registries and operator forums and those sorts of things. And we propose in the new charter to enshrine in the charter some things that have been happening informally with the program committee, that we establish criteria for participation, that we have a way of dealing with the occasional person who might get elected to a steering committee or appointed to a program committee and then find that they don't have the time, but they just sort of hang on. There needs to be some standard for participation in order to continue to sit on either the steering committee or the program committee. Steering committee elections would take place nominally at the last meeting during the calendar year. This first time we're proposing that we advance that a little bit so we'd have a steering committee in place in October in Los Angeles. So this first steering committee would sit for 13 or 14 months instead of 12 months. We would have an open nomination process. Candidates would supply bios to be posted on the website so everybody could see what the qualifications of the people who are running, and there would be an election. Mailing list moderation would be not so different from the way it is now. We, as you all know, implemented a mailing list administration team. We're proposing that team would be appointed by the steering committee, 3 members appointed by the steering committee, 1 member appointed by Merit. We would propose to continue with the 3 conferences a year, although this is something the steering committee we would expect would talk about. There's been a lot of talk about going back to 2 conferences a year. We would expect that would be a steering committee topic among the other sorts of strategic topics for the steering committee. And we would certainly look to the steering committee for guidance and help in selecting hosts and meeting locations, and in fact addressing the question of how hosts are selected and citing for the meetings. I understand there are differing opinions about moving around versus staying in one place, for example. Program committee would be appointed by the steering committee. We're proposing that a member of the steering committee serve ex officio on the program committee, and that the chair of the program committee serve ex officio on the steering committee, in both cases without a vote, in order to provide an important liaison role between the 2 groups so the 2 groups don't get out of sync. And we're proposing a modification from the NANOG reform draft bylaw proposal. We believe there needs to be a way for the community to bring forward changes, a formal process for bringing forward changes. So we propose that the community can originate proposed amendments to the charter. And I think that's the end of my slides. So,
can a steering committee member voting on both?
I believe that the proposal is no, that the 2 groups need to be separate. You need to be either one or the other, except for the sort of exchange of prisoners that we proposed. Both of them, especially the program committee, but both of them, if the steering committee is really active, are likely to be big jobs, and asking one person to take on both could be tough. Plus, you'd be appointing yourself, which is a little odd. Okay, so Steve wanted to say a few words, or we strong-arm Steve into saying a few words. From the perspective of a program committee member. I don't believe Steve's speaking on behalf of the program committee, just from that perspective.
I couldn't possibly presume to speak for just myself. Well, I'm reasonably happy with this. This whole thing has been somewhat of an education process, trying to figure out what the community wants, what Merit's needs are, and all that. One of the things that I think has really been a good thing that came out of this was Merit had to stand back and think about what Merit's role in NANOG should be. And it took some pressure, but Merit has done, I think, a good job of deciding that and in making it so we can move forward now. The other thing that I'm happy about with the proposal is that it does ensure some continuity going forward, so that we don't end up with the case where it's a whole bunch of new people starting from scratch, trying to replicate what's been done in the past. But it also requires some new blood to be brought in, so others can see what a glamour job the program committee is, for example. Can't think of much else to say on the subject, other than that I think this is probably one of the best of a range of possible outcomes that I saw going into the process.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Martin, we also prevailed on Martin to say a few words, again, not representing, but from the perspective of the NANOG Reform Group.
Yeah, so I'm Martin Hannigan. I don't speak for anybody but me. Sounds good to me. I talked to Dan Golding and Rod Seastrom, who weren't able to be here, and they, my comments sounds good to me. And I think that it was good to have Merit have a little pressure to take a look at the way things were working in the past and to analyze what needs to be done to go forward. I think that I think it's good that you guys are renewing your and that we're gonna get a little bit of self rule, so to speak. And I think that I think it's all good. That's pretty much it. Oh, one thing I do want to tell you is a few of us learned that it's not as easy as it looks from the outside looking in. And if anybody wants to get some detail on that, I'll be down in the lobby in a little bit, and I'd be happy to buy your beer and give you my perspective on that. Thanks.
Yeah, or you could hold court on the Nanog yacht in the harbor here this afternoon if you like.
Hey, you want to spend the money? I'm there.
We'll fly you out there on the Nanog helicopter. Yeah, this has been a learning experience, I think, for a lot of us at Merit, and a good thing. And I want to say thank you for keeping these issues alive and making sure that Merit addressed these issues. I think every organization evolves, and Nanog hadn't evolved for a long time. It was time for Nanog to evolve, and we're enthusiastic about this evolution. So thank you very much for that. I also want to say that we really believe in the changes that we're planning to make this summer. This is I probably can't say anything that will convince you if you're skeptical or worse, paranoid. I can't say anything that would convince you that we're sincere about this, but I will say that we're sincere about these changes, that we believe that the folks who are committed to Nanog, who are members of the Nanog community, know best what they need, and that Merit, as Merit operates Nanog, needs to listen to the input from the community, and I'm sincere in making that happen. We are going to listen. This is not just a token effort that we're doing, hoping that everybody will think, oh well, they agreed with us, and now we'll worry about something else for a while.
Actually,
so yeah, questions and comments.
Like to, I'm Vijay Gill. I would like to mention the fact that what all this process has managed to generate is a lot of political BS, and we are starting to look more and more like ITU. I liked the way the old Nanog thing worked, and I thought it worked fine for many years. Then we have a bunch of people who thought, let's go and change this thing without realizing the ramifications of doing this stuff and realizing that it's actually pretty much harder than it looks from sitting outside. It's easier to whine than it is to actually do. So what it looks like here is that we are going down the route of ITU, and if there's ever a steering committee and then study groups to study like changes going forward, I think the point of NANOG is lost. The point of NANOG has not been presentations and meetings. The point of NANOG has been business done in the interstices of the meeting. It's the hallway conversations. It's a group that most of the value I derive from NANOG comes from. And so I think putting voting and memberships, and that's all putting bureaucracy around the experience that made NANOG useful for me. That's my take on it.
Hi, I'm Steve Gibbard. I was the main author of the original NANOG reform proposal and the last of several editors on what I guess became the NANOG reform bylaw proposal that I think you've used a lot of in your proposal.
Thank you for doing all the hard work.
Yeah,
It saved us a lot of writing.
Thanks. And so I'd just like to thank you for your proposal, and I think that the changes that you made to what I had worked on are a positive thing, and that it came out a lot better in your version than it was in my version.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
My name is Mitchell Rose, and in the initial mission statement that you showed, right? Yeah, go back. So you point out that it's for internet providers and the such, how do you see that with the blurring of like large enterprises? I work for Microsoft, and have as large of a network, if not larger, than many people that come here, and coming from the ISP side to a large enterprise. I'm seeing a lot of instances where if it's truly an operators group, right, there's certainly best practices. There's a lot of things that I think that could be shared and that are shared, like VJ was saying in the hallways. There are common problems that we have. Do you see bringing more of that in, or just keeping it ISP centric?
Well, I think that is kind of up to the steering committee and the program committee. That may sound like a really cop-out answer, but I don't presume to know the answer to that question. I think that's something for the community to discuss.
Yeah, from a program committee perspective, we're trying to be inclusive. I personally don't work for a company that would really qualify under the original ISP only charter of NANOG. I work for a content provider. We don't peer with anybody. We only buy transit. But we do share a lot of the same problems, and I do believe that there is a lot of common ground. And one of the things that I want to do on program committee is actively solicit content from, or talks, whatever, participation from what's traditionally been on the fringes of NANOG, which is the content players, the large enterprise players, those people, other people who run big networks that aren't just backbones.
I'm short. My name is Chris Malater. I'm with TDS. I serve on the Mail List Administration Committee. My question is about the proposed change to the Mail List Administration Committee, where we go from 3 members appointed from the steering committee and 1 member. Right now we have 2 members from Merit that sit on it, and it's kind of a nice balance because there's 5 people, so you can't get into a tie per se in the way that it works. Plus, I think that in this particular case, though, down the road it could be revisited. I think that both employees from Merit have radically different experiences, and both have been on the list for a long time and provide a lot of help to the volunteers from the community. I think that you should look at changing it back to having 2 members from Merit on the Mailing List Administration Committee. So just one from being on it and seeing it's crazy. Seeing that, I really think that to make sure that there's 2 there would probably, I think that it keeps the balance, and still we still get the knowledge from the Merit staff of historical data, which is invaluable for the rest of us as we go forward. I'd also like to say to VJ, I think he's completely wrong, but that's only my opinion, and I think that the reform proposal is fabulous. Thank you. Okay, so VJ is going to rebut your statement, but can I, before you rebut the he's completely wrong part, can I ask, what do other people think about the question of the number of members and the composition, in fact? I think there are 2 questions. Do we have an odd number so there's never a tie? And in order to get to the odd number, should there be 2 Merit members? Should there be 4 members appointed by the steering committee and 1 appointed by Merit? Do people have an opinion on that?
The steering committee appoints someone from Merit?
Yeah, I suppose.
Daniel Karrenberg, Rep NCC. I'm not going to give you a straight answer, but I think what you want to do in any of this is you want to think carefully about what kind of functions require continuity and, quote, paid staff, unquote, and what functions require representative things from the community or involvement of volunteers. And I think that should be the guiding principle. So the question is not, do we need 2 people for Merit on this particular mailing list committee or whatever it's called, but how much continuity do you want there? Because if you put volunteers there, there's a chance of continuity but no guarantee. So that's the way to think about this. That's the way we did it a long time ago in RIPE, where we had RIPE and we were doing lots of stuff with volunteers, and then we created the RIPE NCC to have a paid staff component, and quite consciously did that even before this number registration game started. So think about it. What's best done by volunteers and what's best done by paid staff, and then make your decisions accordingly.
That's a good point.
My rebuttal actually is, I'd like to ask the community two things. A, it's the content, stupid. So ever since we've implemented this mailing list committee, has the mailing list gotten any better? I think there's more crap on it now than there was ever before. A. B, it's just a stupid mailing list. We don't need 5 people to run a stupid mailing list. Use ProcMail. Jesus Christ, this is Network Operators Group. Come on. Does anybody else think this is stupid, or is it just me? It's just you. All right.
No, so there is a lot of crap in the mailing list. I mean, you're right, and it is just a stupid mailing list. No one's going to lose their life over the NANOG mailing list, but you know, the subscription, I think, goes up every so often, and the messages by the trends that we showed at the mailing list at the other community meeting show that there's more and more things being posted. I mean, you know, I think I gave an opinion that night that said the mailing list is too big. Maybe that's something that instead of trying to figure out, you know, I'm with you on delete key and ProcMail. But it seems like the majority of people aren't for some reason, and that may not be true as well. I don't know what the middle is and what Merit could do to make everybody happy, or what we could do to make ourselves happy.
Okay, one question. If you can't manage a mailing list and you are running like internet networking, yeah, pretty much.
Well, I got 100% uptime. What's yours?
Okay, so we're going to get a room, some boxing gloves, and we'll sell tickets tonight. Okay. After a year of heated discussions, I can't believe that we have 15 minutes worth of questions and comments.
Let me actually put a proposal to the audience here. I say we take what we have, we cut the mailing list, censorship board, whatever the hell they call it nowadays, the Politburo, put it down to like 2 people, do some of this reform thing, and I really don't care. Really, I mean, just get a move on. I've wasted more time of my life doing this when I could have been talking to people and actually moving on with what I really wanted to do. So I think we should revert back to what your original proposal was. Don't worry about the mailing list. Don't worry about like percentage composition of 2 from a merit and versus 1 from the program committee. That, I think that's bullshit. And just pick 3 people, call it done.
So I'd like to offer to give my spot up on the mailing list to VJ, and I support his two-person proposal.
I think we should just go to a 1-person mailing list and have VJ just run it there. I think the problem herein lies is that the masses spoke that they wanted it this way, and if you don't like that, then that's fine, VJ. But you can't just throw away everybody else's opinion and say that this is the way it is. I'm sorry. There you go. You know, I mean, what do you want?
I'm speaking from a realistic point of view. Okay, half the people who started off with this big noise about we're going to reform NANOG, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, half of them aren't even here. Okay? It's because this is hard work, and I appreciate the people who are doing this, and I think they're doing a pretty good job running it. I think the whiners need to STFU and go do some real networking.
Okay, so I think that I think that we've got to. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I'm trying to find the right way to say this. Everything is. Everything is an approximation. Everything, you try it, you see what works. If the things that don't work, you fix. And I think that's the way that we're thinking about this. So we put this stuff in place, we try it, the things that have value we keep, the things that don't have value we work on. We don't build bureaucracy that lasts for a million years if it doesn't work. Yeah.
Right. I mean, just to reiterate what I said the other night, I think the mailing list experiment, moderation experiment, has worked. I mean, the people who complained about mailing list moderation are now not complaining about mailing list moderation. So to the extent that, more experimentation is not really necessary, I'm not sure, that this should be a really hard problem. Mailing list moderation should be something that has a really light touch, and by and large, people shouldn't be aware that it exists at all. Yes, the signal-to-noise ratio of the NANOG list is really high. That's a property of the number of people on it. Low. Excuse me. The noise-to-signal ratio is very high.
Yeah. And so, some sort of formal evaluation mechanism, like the surveys that we do at the meetings, there needs to be some evaluation mechanism for deciding whether moderation is working, I think. Yeah, so for anybody who's listening and didn't hear that, the plan is to do a survey on the mailing list after the current program committee survey is completed, so people aren't being multiply surveyed at once.
Mike Hughes, goddamn limey, going home on Thursday. So, several large mailing lists. I'm not suggesting we go around and debate this again and again, but several large mailing lists have more than one moderator. That is normal. That is pretty standard. At least one of them, though, has to be the person with God on the box.
So, I think everybody knows what's on topic, and I think the survey idea was a good one, only to be able to go, anybody who doesn't understand what is on topic, go look at the survey. But, I mean, the reality is there are a lot of other lists out there that themselves with one guy with God on the box, and they just make things happen. Now, why does the NANOG list not able to do that? I don't know. And as far as the people who, I just heard someone make this comment. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but the people who were whining about moderation, while they're not doing it on the public list anymore, they are doing it to myself, Chris, and possibly Steve in our ear. And when we've asked for feedback from people, like, what do you want us to do? There's only been a few cases of people willing to actually give the feedback. Now, I'm glad that we're having all this feedback here, but where are you during, when these things are happening? We got a lot of feedback on one issue, which I think we all know what that is. And, we don't really need to debate that, but, so I don't necessarily disagree with VJ. I don't necessarily disagree with Joel, I think, but, when there are more people that can't do it than can, when you run your network, you got to cut your losses and segregate. That's kind of what we're trying to do here.
As an outside observer, I have this question.
No, you're not an outside observer. You have voting privileges. You came to an NANOG meeting.
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure whether I'll exercise them, though. Why don't you guys just declare victory and have a nice afternoon?
I'm all for that. The chair entertains a motion to adjourn?
I'm all for that.
We don't have to just sit here all afternoon on a beautiful afternoon and debate something that's been debated to death.
I don't know any bad jokes. I'm sorry, Mike. They're all good jokes. There's one thing that I did notice that came up out of this whole reform thing, and it actually goes to a point Casey made a long time ago when we were having these discussions, and that is, why do things have to get to such a head that this whole reform movement started in the first place? Is there something that ought to be happening as part of this whole NANOG event that we're not doing that we ought to be doing, so that little problems don't turn into these big monster things that may require this big organizational shift?
Yeah, I think you're exactly.
We have survey forms. We've had survey forms for a long time, but I think we heard earlier that 80 some got filled out for a meeting of 400 people.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad return rate. If you talk to somebody who does surveys for a living, that's not a bad return rate.
Yeah. I think I will answer Bill's question by saying that, at least among those of us who, started discussing this several months ago, I think the feeling on that was that what would make that difference was a lot more open communication, and I think we've gotten to that point now.
Yeah.
So as Daniel suggests, I think I'm ready to go declare victory and have a nice afternoon here. I was noticing in response to Mitchell's comment a while back about the word internet providers in the mission statement and where that leaves big networks that are not selling internet services but are operating big complex internet networks. I'd suggest changing that to network operators instead of internet providers.
Yeah.
Second paragraph of what's on the screen right now.
Middle on the screen. Call it network operators.
Technology deployment in internet networks, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
The word internet provider.
Yeah. Okay. I think you're right. I think closing the loop will help. I think being deliberate about communicating about these issues, having the meta conversation, not just having the conversation about the topics of the talks that we're having this week, but having the conversation about NANOG, which you need to be deliberate about. You need to make time to have that conversation. You perhaps don't have to set aside a total of 7 hours at each NANOG meeting to do this. But this is kind of an unusual transition circumstance. But doing the surveys and then feeding the results of the surveys back, talking about the finances like we did on Sunday night, which was the first time that's ever happened. Providing an opportunity, maybe just a short opportunity at each NANOG meeting for people to stand up and say what they think about the way things are going. I think all of these things, making that discussion about NANOG itself deliberate, paying some attention to it, will keep us from getting to the place where you need a revolution. Although sometimes you just need a revolution, right?
I'm going to relay some stuff from Ren from IRC. So she had a couple of feedback items that she wanted to put in. In terms of the content of the meeting, she said that there should be a peering buff each meeting that's not in the middle of the night, an IX panel each meeting. The surveys have always had feedback about not putting the peering buff in the middle of the night, and it still happens. Let's see, it should be blah, blah, blah. The scheduling, people Joe said to not schedule the meeting during non-business hours. Change the surveys to have different questions. I think that's about it. I don't know.
So,
do you want to? I don't know how to deal with that, so I can only relay the questions. Ren, what questions do you want? I think that it was both. I think not only was it when we should have them, but if we should have them. And I believe that her point is we should have them each meeting, and they should not be in the middle of the night.
I can comment on a couple of those things. Yes, we know. We tried to arrange the schedule so we wouldn't have to have late BOFs this time because of constraints. We weren't able to do that. One of the constraints, of course, being this meeting here. What we did do this time around was switch the peering BOF and the security BOF so that the peering BOF was earlier and the security one was later. But yeah, we would like to move to a point where we can have the BOFs late in the afternoon or something like that instead. It's not going to happen. It didn't happen here. It may or may not be able to happen in LA. We'll find out. But certainly we haven't forgotten that that's a priority for some people, and we want to work towards that. In terms of survey questions, if somebody wants to help design the survey, we would be more than happy to take the input. or even let you decide it altogether. We go around each time debating which questions to ask and never really get good answers. Let's see, there was another point which I have forgotten about, so I won't bother talking about it.
Hi, my name is David Cook. I'm with TDS, and I wanted to clarify something around the peering boss. There's a larger discussion about network operations and what network operations means, and one of the underlying points there is some of that has shifted over time, and I think one subtext is request to somehow feedback into the program committee that which is shifting and that which is important for the network operators. This example was peering. There may be other examples over time that I think we should be paying attention to, and that was just some more context around that.
Just on the BOF scheduling thing, it seems like everyone that I talk to, and we've heard it on surveys and other things, comes here as much for face-to-face time with people and talking as they do to actually see the presentations. And I've never been able to figure out why the BOFs and other sort of semi-structured forums for people to do that aren't interleaved in with the technical program in the day as a part of the focus of this event, since it seems like what people come here for.
Okay, I heard a sizable body of sentiment for declaring victory and enjoying the day. Is that the sense of the group? Well, yes, that's what I thought. So I just want to say thanks again to everybody who's taken the time to express an opinion, to put in so much work on the NANOG reform draft, to keep your 2x4 out and keep whacking Merit upside the head with it until we listened. Thanks to everybody for being so committed to NANOG. I think I'm excited about this. I think it's a good experiment to try. It's going to make NANOG a better activity for everybody involved. So thanks to all of you. I really appreciate it. That's it.